Hello and welcome back to the studio. In today's video, we're going to do another oil pastel painting. We're going to be working off of this reference image today, which is a photo that I took off of Lake Michigan from a family vacation a couple years ago. So you can see that 2-year-old there is my oldest, who is very much no longer 2 years old. One of my main goals with this piece was to push the limits of this set, this landscape set, with a body of water. So this piece started off very similar to how a lot of my other pieces work. I like to map out my initial lines with oil pastel. In this case, I used chrome brown, just one that I thought would be harmonious when mixed in with some of those other colors, but I could still see it. Then I started on the sky, and I have found with this set and just with Sennelier in general, I tend to have to mix a lot of white into my skies to get them to be the value that I want them to be. So I have the sky blue at the very top, a ton of white, and then down toward the bottom, I added a little bit of English rose just to try and get a little bit of a glow. The sun was pretty low in the sky and there was starting to be some fun color right at the base. And so I wanted to try and capture that and also just see if I could add a little bit of interest into the sky without doing a ton of extra work. Now for the water, especially for this smaller section up here, I wanted to focus with having my base color be charcoal blue. This is a very deep saturated blue, very, very saturated, which is super fun. And as you know, I like to generally, I would err on the side of more saturated for my colors rather than less saturated. So I filled this area in with as the base. I did add a little bit of sap green in here in the corner just to add a little bit of interest. I don't think that it really helped anything. Feel free to add it in if you want, but I really think having that charcoal blue base under the whole thing is very important. Then, especially where the horizon line was, I really wanted to make sure that was nice and straight. And all of my strokes when working with the water will be very horizontal. Even as I'm adding in some of the reflections from the waves, I want to keep it all very horizontal. To start building up those reflections, I first went in with sky blue. I could have done the Delft blue, which is also in this collection, but it's so bright, and I really felt like having that lighter color would be better. And again, very horizontal strokes. I'm skipping certain areas so that Delft blue, or so that that charcoal blue is still able to peek through. And I'm just kind of going to go back and forth between the sky blue and the charcoal blue, eventually adding in some white and kind of, again, focusing on horizontal, but they're irregular lines so that we're kind of able to capture some of these waves in here. And then again, going back over everything with a horizontal smoothing motion, very lightly. I'm not trying to blend these colors together. I'm just trying to soften everything to get the illusion of movement on my paper. Starting with chrome brown. I'm just going to kind of get this section in. All right, back to 86 for our green. Just going to kind of block a little section of that in. I do think I want to brighten it a little bit, so we're going to take Cinnabar green yellow and just kind of spin that in just a little bit. But now into yellow deep. Here we go. Back to 86. I'm not sure yet. Usually I want to kind of exaggerate things a little bit, but I'm not sure yet where I want to do that in here. Going in with some, what color are you? Raw sienna. Just a little bit here, kind of in this shadow area. And some Naples yellow here where the sun is kind of hitting. All right, giving my finger a quick clean. I'm going to gently buff some of this out. And then clean pinky. Blend that edge. 86 again. Gonna bring some of this greenery down here. I'm going to kind of connect these two a little bit. Yellow deep. And I'm going to kind of just wiggle around and get some texture carved out of here. I don't want it to be like a ton of harsh texture, but I want it to obviously have some. So I'm just kind of gently going around in a circular motion. Just a little bit of the regular sap green. Just tapped in there for a little bit of shadow. Going to buff that in a little bit. Back to our raw sienna. And overlapping a little bit with 86. There we go, those two colors cancel each other out nicely. A little more raw sienna here at the edge. And this is yellow deep again. Just over top Naples yellow. Doing kind of the same thing, but picking it up a little bit more in between. Then just tapping that in a little bit. I'm going to let that sit for now, and we'll adjust accordingly when we have a little more information down. So I'm going to go in with charcoal blue again, focusing it over here. I have this up here, but I think I'm going to move that down a little. And keeping my movements very horizontal. And I want this to have a curve. Instead of being quite so straight across, kind of move down and be a little more open. It's a little more interesting. All right, and then our light blue, sky blue, sky blue, sky blue. And then up here it's quite light. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that blue in here, and then we'll go in with more of the white. I kind of wish I had an even lighter blue in here. Like, what is it in the portrait palette? Number 11 is very pale and desaturated. I feel like that would work better here than the white, but we can make the white work. Oops. Make sure we don't have any greens in here. Just blend this together. So I'm going to initially start with circular motions, and then we'll finish with very horizontal strokes. I'm going to take some of the violet ochre here, as well as some Naples yellow. And I'm planning to put this in here to help desaturate some of this blue just a little bit. Very lightly adding that in. Maybe I should have started with the violet ochre. And then some more of this white. Yes, we will go. Do you need to get into play clothes?
No.
No?
Go follow me. I think I'm gonna do a chocolate.
That's cool.
On it. Like I have the stickers I could put some
Mm-hmm.
on it.
That's true.
Maybe right before the wheels I could add like grass and trees and stuff.
Grass and trees, huh?
Yeah. Like paint it grass, like green and blue.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the voice on?
Yes, I have the mic on. Again with the violet ochre. I'm sure you can understand why I decided to cut the mic off. The nice thing is we're really just switching between the same colors. We've been using charcoal blue, sky blue, white, chrome yellow, and the violet ochre. And we've just been switching back and forth, trying to kind of capture just the gradients within the reflections on the water and trying to get those where I want them to be. And so it's just a lot of back and forth, trying to get some of those reflections, trying to get some of the texture on the water. Eventually, we're going to start going into the reflections of the sandbar itself. We're just going to take the colors that we already used. So this is, I believe it's 86 or the phthalo, and I'm just repeating it onto the lower side in a mirror image. Then we'll also take the raw sienna and the chrome brown. This is chrome brown, and we're just layering it on top. I'm not going to, when I do start to blend them out, I don't want to blend it aggressively. I want to just move it back and forth because I'm not trying to blend the green with the blue. I'm trying to get the edges to be softer, but not necessarily have the colors mixed together. And I'm going to kind of go back and forth and tweak it. It's funny, like it makes so much sense in my head, but my fingers feel a little awkward. I know what it should do. I know how to do it. I've watched my husband do it with oil paint so many times, and I like know how it should work, but yeah, I mean, a lot of this experience for this specific painting was me just kind of feeling it out and trying to figure out new things. I'm excited to try painting water again. I feel like some of this was very successful and some of it was more difficult. And for me, these reflections were a little more challenging than I expected. And because I found myself struggling, I decided it was important to kind of go back to the reference image. So even though I had deviated from it a little bit, when I'm struggling to capture something or get the effect that I want, I found that it's best to go back to the basics, go back to the reference image. And so you can see I brought kind of the foliage on the sandbar down to the water, just like it is in my reference image. And I started to try and capture some of the texture of the footprints on the sand and just focus on that and like getting the relationship of the sandbar to the water, like the line there, the shadows, really get that so that I can then move down into the reflections a little easier. And this is one of the reasons why working from life or from a strong reference image is so important especially if you're working with something unfamiliar. So I'm not one of those who says that you always have to have a reference image for every single thing you work on. But if you are still learning and you're still mastering and you're still trying to kind of figure out the nuances of a specific subject, like for me, drawing or painting water, then I highly recommend having that reference image. It's just invaluable. So I did continue to kind of just fuss with this and focus on the sandbar and trying to get it, kind of closer to where I wanted it to be. And then I did decide to extend the sandbar, even though this is actually just like a cove. And knowing that I wanted to have that open, I decided that the relationship of the water in the background with the water kind of in the middle ground, this more calm water, it was just trying to get those two to marry. when they're not in my reference image was too difficult, too advanced for my current state. And so I decided to close that area up just by extending the sand and the colors that we've been using for the sand. So I started with some raw sienna, and then I went in with some chrome yellow or chrome brown. And then just using our same green colors, I extended the foliage over the top. I wanted to show you this angle so you could see some of the texture that I'm leaving behind because we have so many oil pastels layered on. It is starting to get a little bit more of a texture to it. And actually, with this being foliage, I actually really like that overall. So I'm just using the oil pastel, this is Yellow Deep, right now to, again, kind of mess with that texture, try and get, it's just a rougher texture. And I think especially next to the water being so smooth in general, that this texture is needed just to add a little bit more interest. Once I was happy with the texture and where the foliage was, I took, I believe this is raw umber, not burnt umber. Burnt umber is in one of my other palettes. And I started to kind of finalize some of the details off of this sandbar and just how it breaks through the water and trying to get that to be a little bit more interesting instead of being quite so smooth and predictable. And so we're breaking into it both with the raw umber and then the chrome brown to kind of get some of that layering. I did find with this piece, though, in general, it seemed to come together a lot more when I layered some white over everything. I just needed to kind of desaturate things. Some of that is just a personal palette preference. Some of that is it reflects more of the reference image, just a little bit more closely. But, like I've said, a lot of these are very saturated, which is good. It's easy to desaturate things. It's very difficult to work with desaturated colors if you want something that is more saturated. But for me, I tend to work a little bit desaturated. So sometimes I kind of go back and forth with, mixing the colors or desaturating them in order to get the hue that I want. Then it was time to work on our foreground, and if there is one thing that I could change, this section would be significantly smaller, probably just grasses or primarily grasses overlapping the water a little bit. I'm much happier with the water than I am with the end result of this section. So this will be brief. We're learning together. So I started with a base of chrome brown, just like we did on the background, and then I did decide to go in with a lot of this raw umber because this is in a little bit more shadow where that area in the background is actually being highlighted. Then it was time to start working in on the reeds, and zooming in on our reference photo, you can see that the base is very dead, but very like a warm brown color, warm tan, really a raw sienna color. So I felt like that was the perfect color to build up for this base here. And then I layered that with chrome brown. So my game plan was get kind of the general color in a little bit of a stripe, and then use other colors to carve out the negative sections with the deeper colors, and then kind of adding those highlights in there. So I continued with that plan by building up kind of this greener section. I wanted to have some brighter green in here. This was either Cinnabar Green Yellow or Cinnabar Green Deep. Both I generally use interchangeably because they're just to add, to kind of bump up that saturation for me. So I'm continuing to kind of add that in there. I probably should have bumped all that down, but I was hoping to cover more of the water with the greenery. Then I started to explore how I would do kind of just the individual areas and trying to kind of carve some of this out just by kind of creating little flicks, really getting some of the deeper values in at the base to ground that area. And just kind of pick up on some of those areas. I do want to take a moment to talk about the sand because I don't think I filmed it very well, but I tried to keep similar to what we did with the water, but it was a very horizontal sections. I did the same thing with the sand, but that was much more rounded to try and kind of mimic the steps and the rise and fall of the sand naturally taking place from all of the footprints that have been in it. But anyway, I did in a the raw umber kind of create those shadows. Now I'm going back in with the chrome brown and trying to kind of capture some highlights and just trying to test the waters and see, is this even going to work? And then when I'm kind of blending everything together, keeping everything very vertical, very unlike our water. So I continued with, on a bigger scale. So I felt like it was working. I'm going to continue to build with it and just kept kind of creating these different spikes in different patterns and trying to get a general rhythm and flow. I think something that would have helped is if I had a green that was closer to the green that you see in the grasses in my reference image, but not having that means that I had to kind of, I don't know, I was trying to mix but keep everything very small and wispy, and that didn't work super great. It did help when I started to, again, kind of go back to building those large blocks of color for my background with the intention of adding highlights in later. But again, being limited with this palette and not having some good desaturated colors to get the tones of the grasses that I wanted was very difficult. And I definitely think I should have used a blending tool a little bit more in order to get some of those more wispy, finer details. And unfortunately, at this point, I became so frustrated and irritated that I quit filming. So here is the piece as it stands now. So I was able to, using kind of that layered blocking method, get the illusion of some of this grass. Unfortunately, again, I think that my limitation on the choices for green to layer these grasses in was the main deal breaker. Cinnabar yellow brown or green brown, I'll put it on the screen. That's a great color that I'm more familiar with now that I would have used to layer for that under layer. And that is included in the landscape palette. Not included in the landscape palette that I would use if I wasn't limiting myself would be moss green and green yellow light. Those I think would have given me a lot more versatility, and I'd be able to get some of that wispiness in the right color. So that was a little bit frustrating. I will definitely try to tackle grasses again, but I think the rest of the painting was a success. Anyway, I hope that you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like it on your way there and hit subscribe. I hope that you are having a wonderful, wonderful day, and until next time, happy painting.